So kia ora koutou. So hi everyone, as Steve said, my name's Anna Berthelsen and I'm a marine scientist within the coastal and freshwater ecosystem group at Cawthron. In this group we have around 60 scientists and we work from freshwater habitats, marine habitats and also estuaries. So today, first of all, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about estuaries, some of the threats they face, how we can monitor their health, and then I'm going to go on and talk about some of the recent work conducted by the Cawthron Insitute on the state of the environment monitoring of the Wairau Estuary. So estuaries can be loosely described as semi-enclosed bodies of water. They're a link between terrestrial and marine environments. They're functionally important and provide a variety of ecosystem services. They're of high ecological value, and they can also have significant cultural, recreational and commercial worth. So there are a variety of threats that estuaries both within New Zealand and around the world can face. Three of the major ones of these relate to eutrophication, sedimentation and pollution. And this is when nutrients, sediments and pollutants can build up within an estuary. So in order to monitor the health of estuaries within New Zealand, the Cawthron Insitute has created what is called the Estuary Monitoring Protocol. And this is a standardised set of protocols that can be used to compare the health of one estuary over time and also to compare the health of different estuaries around New Zealand. So this is the Wairau Estuary, which is just down the road. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. So it's quite, I'll just use this pointer. So it's quite a complicated system. So along here we have the Wairau boulder bank, and that's separating Cloudy Bay from the main estuary. The main estuary channel runs down here into two large lagoon-like areas, and these areas experience restricted tidal flushing and therefore could be described as choked lagoons. We have quite a kind of complicated series of channels and drains running all around this area. Some of the main freshwater influences coming down here from the Wairau River, and then we also have the Okiwa River coming down in here as well. And we also have a saltwater influence, a tidal-mediated saltwater influence coming in here across the Wairau Bar. So this whole area has been highly modified in the past, both through human activities and also naturally occurring events as well. In terms of some of its ecology, we know that over 90 species of birds and 20 species of fish have been found within the estuary, and we do know that it is nationally significant in terms of its ecology and geology, and we also know that it has extremely high cultural value, and it's also used recreationally as well. So Cawthron's work was to conduct a baseline state of the environment monitoring of the Wairau Estuary, and this is part of the Marlborough District Council's Coastal Monitoring Strategy 2012. So Cawthron assessed the condition or health of the estuary using the Estuary Monitoring Protocol, and this is based on 2 point-in-time surveys. These involve broad-scale habitat mapping and fine-scale Bintic surveys. And we're also fortunate enough to be able to gather some historical perspectives of the Wairau Estuary from local community members. So today I'm going to go first off talk about the first component of the study, which was broad-scale habitat mapping. In order to do this, we created digitised habitat maps of the estuary, and we did this by using both kind of aerial photographs and also comprehensive ground truthing of the habitats as well. So here we have one of our habitat maps of the estuary. So overall we mapped over 1,500 hectares of estuary habitat, making this estuary quite significant, one of the largest in the Nelson Marlborough regions. You can notice quite a lot of blue in this. Blue represents subtidal habitats, which means it's permanently covered in water. And this was nearly 80% of the entire estuary, which is large compared to a lot of other estuaries. And the remaining just over 20% of the estuary was classed as intertidal habitat. This is the green and the kind of orangey brown that you can see. And yeah, we also mapped a 10-metre buffer margin around the entire estuary, and this is what we call the supralittoral fringe. So from our habitat maps, we found both some positive and some potentially negative indicators for the health of the estuary. So I'm just going to go through some of these now. So we found a large expanse of vegetation that we call salt marsh. This covered just over half of the intertidal area, and this is a positive indicator for the health of the estuary, as it can provide quite a number of benefits, including acting as a buffer zone between the land and the sea. So a lot of the vegetation within the salt marsh we classified as herb field, and this herb field was primarily comprised of a plant species called glasswort, and that's mostly what you're seeing in this picture, sort of red vegetation. However, the salt marsh is also comprised of other vegetation, such as the sea rush that you can see here sitting amongst the glasswort. So I also mentioned that we also found some quite or potentially negative indicators for the health of the estuary. One of these was that quite a lot of this salt marsh did appear to have kind of limited connectivity with the estuary, and it was potentially behaving more kind of with a terrestrial function. Another one was that we did find some macroalgae within the estuary. We found this in both intertidal and subtidal habitats. And this was primarily comprised of a red seaweed species called Gracilaria, or it's also called, agar weed as well. So this here is a photo of an agar weed bed, which is in the main estuary channel, the Wairau Estuary. So in terms of this, more research does need to be conducted, but a build-up of macroalgal abundance within an estuary can quite often be indicative of increasing nutrient levels within an estuary, and also potentially a change in the hydrodynamics or sedimentation regime of that estuary. So we didn't take this photo in the Wairau Estuary. We actually found no eelgrass within the estuary, even though we do know that it has been, or it was historically present. And this is a negative indicator for the health of the estuary, because seagrass can provide quite a number of benefits, including stabilisation of the seafloor, and also can provide habitat and food for animals as well. And we also know that eelgrass is highly susceptible to increasing fine sediment within an estuary, and also other factors, including increasing nutrients. So this is another potentially negative indicator for the health of the estuary, is that we found a large area of muddy sand habitats. This covered just under half of the intertidal zone. And we actually found no sand habitat, what we classify as sand habitats, which are commonly found in a lot of other estuaries which are monitored using the estuary monitoring protocol. So these mud sand habitats could be indicative of increased sedimentation within the estuary, and I'll just show you some photos now of that can show that process of sedimentation. So this is a photo of the Wairau Estuary in flood in 2008. If you can see, the water in the estuary is kind of a browny colour, so it's indicating that it is holding an increased sediment load. So this sediment has unlikely come down from the catchment, being flushed into the river, and then flushed out and deposited into the estuary. And this is a 2011 satellite image of the Wairau Estuary, and you can see the sediment plume which has come out over the Wairau Bar into Cloudy Bay. So as I've mentioned, we also mapped the supralittoral fringe, which is the 10-metre buffer zone around the estuary margin. We found that most of this habitat was vegetated, which is a positive indicator for the health of the estuary, although a lot of this vegetation did comprise of exotic grasses, and so this does indicate a modification of the natural state of this habitat. So on top of the kind of more traditional broad-scale habitat mapping, we also trialled the use of a drone. And to do this, we chose a subset of the estuary, and we used the drone to take aerial images of this area. And these images, which you can see on the left, we compared them with images taken from an aeroplane, and the aeroplane images are what we would typically use for broad-scale habitat mapping. So you can see that the high resolution of the drone images could be used to increase habitat mapping accuracy. So now I'm going to move on to the second component of our study, which was fine-scale Bintic surveys. So to do this, we analysed a suite of seabed characteristics at 3 reference sites within the estuary. And some of these characteristics included the redox discontinuity layer, which is a measure, indicates the level of oxygen depletion within the sediments. And we also measured nutrient levels and total organic carbon levels within the sediment, as well as pollutants such as heavy metals and semi-volatile organic compounds. Along with these, we also looked at the abundance and diversity of animals living both on and within the sediment. So these are our 3 reference sites here. We have site A and B in the lagoon-like areas, and then we have site C up in the main estuary channel. Up in the top right corner is our sampling design, but I'm not going to go into that in detail. So from our results, or some of our results indicated that the estuary was in a fair ecological condition. So some of these indicators, such as heavy metals, except for nickel within the sediments, were below trigger guidelines for ecological impact, and we also found no obvious impact levels for semi-volatile organic compounds. We found no nuisance micro or macroalgal blooms on the sediment surface, and we also found that animal abundance and diversity at Site C was more typical of healthy estuarine ecosystems, although the species composition was notably different. So these are just some of the photos of some of the animals that were found at Site C. So the top 3, the mud snail, cockle and a crab, these were found on or near the sediment surface, and the bottom 2, the estuarine snail and an amphipod, these were commonly found living within the sediment. So our fine-scale results also show potential indicators of compromised ecological condition. And we found that sediments at both the lagoon sites A and B were dominated by mud. We also found that nutrient and organic levels, as well as redox discontinuity layers, did indicate moderate to slight to moderate organic enrichment of the sediments. And we found that nickel levels within the sediment. These are likely to be of natural origin, but they were slightly elevated, and they did indicate that they could have ecological effects. And we also found very low abundances and diversities of animals at both of the lagoon sites. So this is just a photo of the part of the Cawthron field team, hard at work. So if we combine the results from our broad-scale habitat mapping with our fine-scale Bintic surveys, based on these estuary monitoring protocol indicators, and in comparison to other estuaries within New Zealand, we found that the Wairau Estuary is exhibiting signs of being in a fair to compromised environmental condition. And these results, and those from the historical perspectives, do indicate that key estuary functions and values have been undermined. But it is important to note that these findings should ultimately be considered in context to the choked lagoon nature of the Wairau Estuary, as this may naturally differ in characteristics compared to other estuaries typically monitored using the estuary monitoring protocol. So here are some of our recommendations for future monitoring within the Wairau Estuary. We suggest continued monitoring at 5-yearly intervals using the estuary monitoring protocol. Due to the high proportion of subtidal habitat within the estuary, we also suggest incorporating the monitoring of subtidal benthic habitats within the monitoring protocol. And because macroalgal abundance can vary over time, and the dynamics of this was most likely not captured in our point of time survey, we would also suggest monitoring macroalgal abundance within the estuary over successive years. And due to the kind of the complex modifications that have occurred within the estuary in the past, we also suggest reviewing historic literature and maps in order to better understand the ecological and hydrodynamic changes that have occurred within the estuary. And as part of this, we would suggest collecting and analysing long sediment cores in order to better understand historic sediment deposition rates within the estuary. And we highly recommend to engage and consult with local iwi, and I'd like to acknowledge that we're fortunate enough to have some representatives from Rangitani here today, and we think it would be great to do this and build on the knowledge of the history and the value of the Wairau Estuary. And it is also possible in the future to be able to incorporate iwi values into the estuary monitoring program. So there's a lot of people that we would like to thank for their assistance with this work. And thank you for listening.